decision here. Neama, thank you so much, as always, for taking the time to join us.
Hey, thanks for having me, Josh.
Of course. And do want to ask you kind of your overall reaction here based on your legal expertise, hearing 50 months in prison for Sean Diddy Combs. Break down your thoughts here as that number came out.
Josh, I'm not surprised. In fact, I came on LiveNOW yesterday and I predicted 4 to 5 years, and that's exactly where we ended up. And the reason I thought we were going to get here, some of it was reading the tea leaves, of course, but what the judge had said immediately after the verdict, the fact that he detained Diddy, he didn't release him on bond. He thought he was a danger to women. And also what the defense did before and during sentencing. I've been very critical of the prosecution, but they really had an extraordinary comeback today. They brought it today during sentencing. And I thought, on the other hand, the defense did a very poor job today. And this is why they made today about Sean Diddy Combs and everything that he had done. They needed to make today about the victims in the case. And in fact, what they did before is to file paperwork saying that Cassie, Jane, Mia, they weren't victims at all, and they shouldn't be able to testify today. Well, that's something that certainly the judge took issue with and said was entirely inappropriate. And from the beginning, it was clear today Diddy was going to get time, and it was just a question of how much.
And of course, with your estimate there, you should play the lottery because you were right on between 4 and 5 years, sentenced there to 50 months. And on the left-hand side of your screen, you can see those microphones set up. We are monitoring here as we wait to see possibly different news conferences that could come out from those who were involved in the case. We're going to make sure to bring those to you in full as we get them. But Neama, I did want to ask you about something that was brought up in court today that a lot of people are talking about, and that is these teaching and speaking engagements that were brought up, saying that Sean Diddy Combs appeared confident as he had already scheduled some of these engagements for next week. Does the judge factor that in when he hears that Diddy is so confident that he's going to be released?
No question. And this came up actually during the bail as well, where Diddy was making plans to be home with his family and loved ones for the holidays. He really thought he was going to be bonded out. And it just really shows the hubris, that's the word the prosecution used, or maybe just being presumptuous. Look, the argument in this case was that Sean Combs was the puppeteer. That's one of the arguments the prosecution made today very effectively. He was using his power and wealth to manipulate people. And he thought that he deserved special treatment because of his celebrity status. But if you're really planning what you're going to do in Miami next week when you're locked up in the MDC, that is a terrible look. And that's something that the assistant U.S. attorney seized upon very effectively. Attorney Brian Steele, one of the best there is, Young Thug's lawyer, he was really on his heels. He tried to explain it away as healing for Diddy. And then they brought the executive director of the nonprofit to say that it was a teaching engagement, but certainly a bad look at best, and really put the defense on the run in this case.
And I've spoken with several legal experts. I want to get your take on this. When you do have a sentencing hearing like this, it lasted for most of the day. We're talking several hours, and you also had several people, including 6 of Diddy's children, that spoke. Does that have any sort of influence on the judge, or is it likely that the judge goes into this in the beginning and already has an idea of the exact sentence itself?
It's the latter. So the judge has read all the paperwork here. There was sentencing memoranda, there's a pre-sentence report, there's replies, there's letter briefs. So there was a lot. So the judge had an idea of what he was going to do. And really, Josh, in a case like this, you got to go one of two ways. And I think this is where the defense made the mistake. You either have to fall on the sword, go all in, apologize to the victim, without any qualifications whatsoever. Even when Diddy spoke and addressed the court, he really only apologized to Cassie and Jane. He didn't even address victim Mia. Or you got to take the second approach. You got to sort of stand your ground, make your legal and factual arguments so you can preserve the record on appeal. But here, the defense, they tried to do both. 5 different lawyers spoke and they made legal arguments. And none of them, except for one, addressed any of the victims. And that one was Steele. And he said that she consented and she wanted it. Well, That's not going to be effective when you're pursuing a mitigation argument and you're asking for leniency, and the judge is asking whether your client is truly and genuinely accepting responsibility. They played a produced video which showed Diddy with his children as a family man doing different charitable work, but the prosecution effectively came back and said, "This is a production, Your Honor. The real Diddy is the Diddy in the 2016 video of him beating Cassie when he doesn't know the cameras are rolling." So I think the judge came into this saying, you know what, this is where I think I'm going to end up. I really thought it was going to be that 4 to 5 years. But certainly, if the defense and the defendant really accepts responsibility and maybe considers something that would prejudice that appeal, right? Because if you admit responsibility, it's harder to appeal. And maybe he could have gotten some time off of that 4 to 5 years. But when the defense came out and attacked the victims, Josh, it was really game over, and it was a foregone conclusion that Combs was going to get significant time.
And this is a post here from CB Cotton, our friend over at Fox News, who said that she's told Diddy will get credit for time served. So between this and good behavior, he could be released in as little as 2.5 years. Can you explain for folks out there how that works? Because we know that when folks are not in federal jail there, federal prison, that they get released on good behavior. Can you explain how that works in a federal situation?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. CB is right. So under the federal system, you generally have to serve 85% of your sentence. You get a 15% reduction if you're a well-behaved model inmate. So assuming he has no issues, he is going to get credit for the 13, 14 months he served already, plus that 15%. So if you crunch the numbers, it's going to be another 2.5 years before he's released. So that's right. You can kind of run the numbers. So that'll put us well into 2028 when Combs sees the light of day, unless, of course, there's a successful appeal. And it's no secret that his team is also lobbying the president for a presidential pardon. So that's always a possibility as well.
What are the next steps here? What are Diddy's options? You kind of discussed this a little bit, but when you speak about the potential here for an appeal and all of that, break down how that process works.
So the next steps are as follows. Within 30 days, the defense is going to file their notice of appeal. And I expect that to happen as early as next week. On appeal, I expect three main arguments. The first, that Judge Subramanian improperly considered acquitted conduct during the sentencing today. Now, historically, that's something you can do. There was a change made to the sentencing guidelines last year in 2024 that limits that acquitted conduct. So that's going to be a big argument. That really just affects the sentence, though. Then they're going to attack the conviction itself on two grounds. The first is because Diddy did not personally participate in the sex act, that's not prostitution, just voyeurism. The second argument attacking the conviction is that because Diddy was filming the sex acts, it was really homemade pornography and it was protected by the First Amendment. So those are the three arguments I expect to see on appeal. Now, that appeal is going to be heard sometime in 2026. And if the appeal is successful, the appellate court can do one of two things. They could vacate the conviction entirely, in which case Combs would be freed, or they could order a new trial. So those are the possibilities if an appeal is successful. Now, with respect to the pardon, the president, of course, at any time with a stroke of his pen, could free Diddy. He can pardon him outright. He can commute his sentence, which means he'll still be a convicted felon, but he won't be in custody. And we know that the president has been very liberal with his pardons. He's even pardoned a lot of high profile rappers. So that's certainly a possibility and something that the president actually addressed with reporters months ago in the Oval Office.